Hey everyone, Evan Kirstel here. Another great discussion today with the most timely of topics AI, data science, generative AI with Vin Vashishta, best-selling author, consultant, analyst, educator. Vin, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. We were just joking that we've probably followed each other on social media for 7 or 8 years and have never spoken. So that's a first. Maybe introduce yourself to the viewers, to the folks watching. Who are you? A little bit about your background, Vin.
Yeah, definitely. You did a good job of breaking down the most recent, but I've been in technology for over 25 years, data science and machine learning for over 11 now. Founded V Squared in 2012, and it's gone through multiple iterations. But my first foray into AI was in the 90s when that first little wave came up and then disappeared. So I went into software engineering, software development, led teams, built teams, went through the cloud, that first cloud cycle. And then BI came around, data science and machine learning became feasible. Spent the first 3 to 4 years of the business just doing R&D, building, productizing, productionizing, commercializing data science and machine learning, figuring out how to get people to pay for data, get people to pay for data science, machine learning models, figure out how they fit into the way that people worked. And that all became sort of the process that I teach now and teach classes. I've got the book, the consulting and AI advisory services, just helping companies come to terms with everything because it's such an enterprise wide event. And we now live in this multi technology environment. We got digital, we got cloud, we have IoT, we have 5G, we have, singing and dancing, we have data, we have AI, we've got quantum coming up in 5 or 10 years. We have platforms that are
Mm.
emerging, we have AR, VR. Mean, it's truly a multi technology environment. And now we need technical strategy to handle this just as much as we need any other type of business strategy.
Yeah, it's geek's paradise, but you actually have a background in both business and technology. You talk about things like data science ROI, which is an unusual term of art. So, how do you think those two disciplines, if you will, business and tech, complement each other in the context of data science and
I
AI?
think I think they can complement each other very nicely, but we need translation layers and we need frameworks. That's always been the missing component between business and technology is this construct that we don't have translators. Those are people who can translate the technology into value and into terms that C-level leaders understand, but also frontline and customers. People are going to use this stuff. And with the digital paradigm, we've had a lot of experience. We haven't had a lot of experience with data. We haven't had a lot of experience with machine learning supported products. So we can deliver a ton of value. But the challenge is that translation and then putting the frameworks in place to support monetization, to support turning all of this technology into products that the business can get returns from. So that's been, in my experience, that's the missing link. It's not that we're bad at technology. It's not that we're bad at business. We're bad at technology for business and businesses that understand where technology fits in the business model and operating model.
Yeah, it's amazing how, as geeks and practitioners, you and I and many others jump in and use this tech. But yeah, if you look at most industries, most companies, they're pretty cautious, pretty conservative when it comes to leveraging technology. What are some of the roadblocks, some of the mindset or other challenges they face? And in which industries? Who do you think which industries are really embracing the cutting edge best practices that you preach and others, and who are the laggards?
Well, I think if you look at industries that are challenged with figuring out how to productize technology,
Mhm.
how to turn it into something their customers can use, because that's what gets businesses excited is the revenue. Cost savings is awesome, but the first time you see checks written for inference, for data, something changes. All of a sudden it's, oh, we can grow with this. This is a growth engine. And so if you look at companies like Ford, McDonald's, they're challenged because McDonald's doesn't sell data with your cheeseburger. Like that's not going to be something they're including in the Happy Meal anytime soon.
I'm going to
So
ask
that,
that just for kicks and giggles next time I go through a drive-through.
can I
Yeah.
get a side of reporting? Can you give me can you use some analytics with that? So that's a but at the drive-through, they are now figuring out they're working with IBM to figure out how to automate that drive-through experience. And so now you are getting a little bit of machine learning along with your cheeseburger. Ford is working towards the same thing. They sell cars. How do we now change and emulate more of what Tesla's done and begin to figure out how to monetize technology as a recurring revenue stream? So they're challenged, but I think even industries that are challenged are starting to figure out this is how we integrate it into our products. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that the majority of companies that I've seen stumble with it run into is how do we make this work for us? You watch how it works for Meta. Yeah, that's great. You watch how it works for Google and for Microsoft and for all of these massive companies. But not everyone is ready for technology first, even though every company now is a technology first company. Every company now has to have an AI story. I mean, that's what generative AI has done. There's a huge investor interest in what is your generative AI strategy? What are you doing with generative AI? So there's now a real driver and motivator for adoption. But C-level leaders, the stumbling block is how do we get this from okay, it's generative AI to that check, that thing that gets them really interested and really engaged and bought in. How do we turn this thing into a check? And I think that's the barrier is there's so much that isn't technology problem that has to be solved in order to turn technology into revenue, into cost savings. It's enterprise wide. That's why I say the frameworks are a big deal here. New roles and participation from different parts of the business that aren't usually they're not included, but they need to be. They're part of this continuous transformation from technology to technology to technology to technology. Talking about it as a one-time event, obviously it isn't. That's where I think the barrier comes in is we have these cultural barriers. We have these paradigms that we need to break. We have a different monetization methodology. It just everything needs to change. And I don't think most businesses understand this is end to end, this is big.
This is big. So tell us, speaking about big and big sellers, your book, From Data to Profit, How Businesses Leverage Data to Grow Their Top and Bottom Lines. What was the genesis of the book, and how did that all come together? A great publisher, Wiley.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, give us the backstory.
That it was sort of out of the blue, but I realized partway through that I've been building to this book for probably the last 7 or 8 years. It started as a seminar. I was asked
Hmm.
to bring the frameworks together for a couple of different clients. And it was funny that they both, within a month, both came to me and said, hey, you keep talking about this being an enterprise wide thing. Can you show me? Now, show me what this really looks like as an enterprise wide thing. And that's where I began to consolidate and build the frameworks and come up with this idea of technical strategy that I pulled from a bunch of different places. And after the first two seminars, I got asked, can you give us some additional materials? There was nothing. And so that after, after about a year of refining, it turned into a seminar that I gave repeatedly. That turned into a class, turned into several classes actually. And then Wiley last year at the end of November approached me and said, hey, are you ready to write a book? And it was interesting. They had to tell me. I had never thought about, I need to write this down in a book. And so they sort of came to me, you ready for a book? And I said, you know what? Yeah, yeah, actually I am. Why not? Let's start this process. And that
That's
became the book,
fantastic.
just the end to end everything and appealing to that multi-tiered audience, C-level, executive level, really board, investors, mid-level leadership, front line, and then your technical, your data team, those people that are really tasked with execution but need to understand the business better and figure out how do we deliver value. All of that's really important. And I think there isn't a single playbook that's out there today that looks at it from all of those perspectives. There's a lot of great material out there, but you really not that centralized. This is not just for business. This is strategy also for technologists. And I don't think there was enough out there that blends the two and brings the two together. And so that's really what the book is for, is bringing both sides together and teaching a new sort of role that does the translation and helps the two sides connect from data to profit.
Fantastic. In addition to a writer, you're a pretty prolific speaker at industry events and elsewhere. What are some of the typical questions you get asked from the audience about data and analytics, AI, beyond?
Does this actually work? I think that's the most interesting question. Is this ready for prime time? That's one of the most interesting questions. I've gotten that question for 8 years.
Mm,
That is the one question I can say over the span of time. Everyone asks, is this ready? And then they want to dive into use cases. And I think that's the interesting part of this that I try to teach data professionals is if you start with the technology, you end up with technology. If you start
mm,
with value, that's probably what you're going to end up with. So if we can begin to speak in terms of use cases instead of, yes, we have these wonderful, we have mesh. No one cares. No one cares about data mesh at the business level. They only care because they feel like they have to. If they don't understand data mesh, they don't feel like they can get their needs met. And what we're doing is dragging people who aren't technical into the technology. We're dragging strategists, C-level leaders
mm.
into the technology, into the tactics. It's not where they live. It's not where they belong. It's not how they create value. And then we wonder why. why? Why don't these things succeed? Why can't we get anything into production? Well, it's not because the technology is busted. It's because the use case isn't where we begin. And so what we end up with is often disconnected. And we have to, after the fact, reconnect it with the business. That's usually kludgy and ugly. And, there's no other way to say it. If we don't start with the business, and that's really the thing that I think resonates with the majority of audiences is when they have a data scientist say, we should be starting with you. We should be talking about use cases. I had at the last event I spoke at, I had another person on the panel say, "You're really the big, the data scientists." I said, "No, it's the users, it's the use cases,
Mm.
the people that are building. You're more important because when you say we did this and here's the value that it created." Now all of a sudden you're bringing people into the conversation who are saying, "I want the same thing." And I think that's the question no one knows how to ask yet. And so it's a process of education, but really what people want to understand is how do we get value out of this? What can this do? What is ready? What's hype? Who should we be listening to? Who's, talking maybe about some things that aren't practical or that aren't ready for prime time yet?
Brilliant. So you're also a mentor to a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs who, like us, are obsessed with AI and all these emerging generative AI applications. Any advice that you typically give them? I guess starts with education. But what else?
It's harder than you think. I think that's
Hmm.
a lot of times especially when you talk about the entrepreneurial side, we believe that it's enough. And this is something that's common in technologists. We believe that it's enough to just hang up our shingle and offer a product or service, and they will come to us. They won't. They don't get it. And that's what we say, it didn't work. Why? Timing. They weren't ready. They didn't get it. No, we did a really bad job of explaining it. We did a bad job. Sometimes it's over engineering. We're trying to meet too many use cases all at once. And if we niche and explain the value proposition and why this thing is so amazing for that first set of adopters, that's really my advice is figure out who your target audience is, live with your customers, live with your users, do everything you can to get feedback from them and get them to fall in love with your product as much as you love it. Explain the value, but build it for them. Don't build it for you because we as engineers do that so much. I've seen so many startups, especially in the data engineering space. Oh, ML ops and data engineering is a ton of applications that solve the
Mm,
CEO's problem or solve
mm,
the technical co-founder's problem. But then they can't scale. because there's only so many people that have the exact same problem who get it. And it's a matter of figuring out how to make that next step and going from a product or a service that you would use to a product and service now that a broader range of customers and users will adopt. And in a lot of cases, they fail to make that transition, or by making that transition, they lose their core, that original set of loyal, absolutely diehard customers that love the brand, that love the product. They lose them. And if you go too far in one direction or the other, that's why I say live with your customers, live with your users, just get obsessed. Love the problems that they have and
Mm,
engage in solving them.
fantastic advice. So, in the rise of AI, this new wave of AI, tons of ethical concerns
Yes.
have been raised. And as an advisor, as a consultant, I mean, how would you suggest businesses ensure that they're using their data and AI in a responsible way, in an ethical way, when there really aren't, in many cases, guidelines here? It's sort of a new territory.
I think every business has to make a decision about, so here's our brand.
Mm,
Here is how customers, and I define brand as how customers feel when they leave every interaction with your business. That's how they feel. How do you want that brand to extend into ethics, into machine learning and AI? Where do you want customers to leave feeling? And not just the good, but when AI fails, because it does. AI is not like digital technology. When you throw out a digital application, it does the same thing over and over and over and over again. It has bugs, but it's consistent functionality. AI is different. You have functional requirements, but you also have reliability requirements. And the reliability is where you begin to get into the ethical gray areas because it doesn't behave the same way as digital technologies do.
mm,
So we have to decide when it gets into those reliability spaces, how do we want our customers to feel? This gets into thinking about transparency. Your model will make mistakes, and we're seeing that so often with generative AI. Why is OpenAI one of the fastest ever? I mean, the fastest ever to 100 million users? Because they have a specific brand, and this is how they want you to feel when you leave their product. They don't
mm,
want you to feel taken advantage of. They don't want you to feel like something terrible happened to you. And they respond because they understand, yeah, there's going to be problems, and they are responding as these come up to make sure that their experience and their brand, that ethical framework, fits together. Microsoft doing exactly the same thing, IBM doing exactly the same thing. And what's great about all of these companies is that they are from top down CEOs saying, look, this is what we're going to do. Satya Nadella's hammered home on how they take care of your data when you're using GPT through Azure. CEO of IBM, same thing. CEO of Apple, same thing. Your data on your device is protected. And he made that really, really clear at the Worldwide Developers Conference. And it's that alignment, brand, what we do, but also how we fix and how we address, because there will be problems. And as long as we remain true to the brand and what we're telling customers, they'll be they will be understanding. And we're seeing instance after instance of that, where customers are, obviously with the outlier exceptions, customers are accepting of a company that is quick to respond and consistent across its brand and values.
fantastic advice. So we've seen with a lot of the early apps and services use cases with generative AI, they're sort of the shiny object syndrome. They're fun and entertaining, in some cases interesting to use, but not exactly making a positive impact on the world. Are there some ways of data and AI are being used for that tech for good? In your voice, I'm seeing a lot, for example, in healthcare already, that have a meaningful impact on to patients and their providers. What say you on more meaningful applications beyond silly profiles and pictures and videos?
I honestly think we should be doing more.
Mhm. Mhm.
because AI for good has multiple facets to it. One of them is advertising harm. And I
Mm.
think this is something our industry does a horrible job at. We are talking about, the Terminator. Yet the Terminator's not here. We
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
we don't have a Terminator wandering the streets right now. Yes, we will. Yes, we should be preparing for the potential of weaponized AI, but that's in the future. Let's talk about what is happening to people today that is harmful. So I think that's one way we can do more AI for good and data for good. The second way is to not have to monetize everything to the nth degree.
Mm.
Data gives us the ability to optimize all of these business systems, but also gives us the opportunity to look at some of the network effects and more complex impacts, especially societal. And if you look at sustainability initiatives wouldn't be possible without that combination of data supporting what works, what doesn't, and the returns, not just to the business, but returns to society. But also, we have this other side of it, which is the vision. No one buys into data. No one would be doing a sustainability initiative if all I did was throw reports at them. It is the vision, it's the purpose. And we can show the connection between these very obscure actions that we do to improve the sustainability of business, to make really every part of our society better for people, more inhabitable for people. And we can use data to show what's working, what isn't working, and make that connection between purpose, vision, and actual outcomes. Because I think that's been one of the biggest rubs on a lot of these societal types of initiatives is okay, but is it really doing anything? And we have
Mm.
arguments because the evidence isn't there, and we need to make that connection between we're doing something and it's resulting in good. And there'll be way less hesitation to do these types of initiatives if a company can prove it. If they can say, look, we're actually making a difference. Oh my goodness. We did this and look at what happened. If they can make that connection, close the loop between initiative and outcome, oh, that's a data for good. And so we think about products, but data itself is a product. The ability to see these longer chains, to be more forward looking and prescriptive. These are capabilities that data and AI bring. So AI for good isn't just, we should be building these products that are traditional in the way that we think about them, but really in the way that people engage with data and with models. If we think about that, we can do a whole lot more data and AI for good than if we're just thinking about this product might do this thing.
No, I love that approach and philosophy. It's sort of similar to the sustainability movement. Early on, there was a lot of hype and greenwashing, and
Mhm.
talk was cheap. But now it's really fundamental to the business, top line, bottom line as well, being green and sustainable and recyclable and all these things. So let's hope AI develops in the same fashion. Give us a peek behind your sort of personal, professional tech stack. Are there some apps, services that you like to use day in, day out? We've all dabbled in all these services in one way or another. Any favorites or?
I don't really have any favorites yet. I think we're
Mhm,
still at the emerging stage.
mhm,
I
mhm,
like I mean, I like what Adobe's rolling out with Sensei. I like what Microsoft's rolling out. I like what Google's rolling out.
mhm, mhm,
But Salesforce has got some great products. IBM's got great
mhm.
products. SAP's got great products. And then there's this startup landscape.
Cornucopia.
Yeah, you look at Hugging Face, they make it so easy to build,
Right.
but we have all of these other problems that now that we've put products in people's hands, we're starting to see the real challenges of pushing these into a wider adoption, scaling them up, dealing with different levels of capability and understanding. And that's where I think right now we really break down because they don't work for everyone. And that's why when I get asked this question, like, what's my tech stack? My tech stack will not work for 95% of the people that are watching this because I know how to make it work. I can play with it and make it do whatever I want it to. but that's not 95% of users. I think we oversell a lot by saying, "Oh, this is so amazing." Right. If you have all this domain knowledge and background and you've been using this stuff for 3, 4 years, oh yeah, no, it is awesome. But it's not awesome for everyone yet. And
Yeah, that
when you
was
talk about
ChatGPT's like
responsibility,
simplicity was its
yep,
attraction. You know, your mother could just type it in a text interface, just the simplest of
yeah,
UXs, and it worked. So
yeah, and I love things like Sensei. Adobe's doing really good work to make it simpler. But you can see it. It's the same thing as OpenAI's ChatGPT. There's bugs, there's problems.
hmm.
And if you don't know all of the little nuanced things, you run into a problem and you don't know that you've run into a problem. So a lot of times, and I see this with fingers, a great example
Hmm.
for all of your imageries, generative AI. Most of them fail miserably with hands. And you just have to know that. It fails when you get into complex structures like branches.
Hmm.
There's some really funky stuff that you'll see in trees if you don't have them far enough in the background. And so it's just these little things, but your average user doesn't know all that stuff and they don't have time. So I think it's important to say we have amazing tools today, but there's training, there's upskilling required. And that sets an example, just being transparent and open, but it also sets a standard for businesses. They know if we adopt this, we are going to have to do some training. I think that's more honest. And I don't think that reduces the value prop at all.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. Well, look, we're almost out of time. I would just ask, you're in Reno. It's getting a little hot here in the summer. Any plans for travel, personally, professionally? Any other events that you might be looking at over the next couple months?
I'm hoping to get some baseball in. Go Giants. That just lost half the audience, unfortunately. But that's it's the cost of being a fan.
I have
Hopefully,
one
getting some
Giants
time.
fan, I think, but yes, go Sox. But
Yeah,
yes.
trying to. Well, good team, really good team. It's yeah, hoping to get some vacation time and relaxation time in. Don't have a ton of events coming up when the book launches in about 3 weeks. I'm
Mhm.
ready for the hurricane because that's when it's really going to start. So that's
Absolutely.
getting vacation in while I can and getting ready for what comes next here. First time author, so I've got all spectrums of advice about what could be happening and not sure what to expect. A little nervous, a little excited.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining. Thanks for your insights and
Thank you.
analysis as always. And thanks viewers for watching and participating. Feel free to DM Vim or respond with any questions you might have. Thanks, Vin. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.